r/NoSleep. Posted by you/AliasForWhom. I'm breaking my family's one rule at midnight. I'm showing everyone the truth. Every year, one of us is chosen to learn the truth about our family. Their name is pulled from a nice glass bowl, everyone cheers, then they are brought down to the basement to bring in the new year while everyone else parties. Last year, I found out, and I refused to hold it from anyone another year. It's not right. We all arrived at Grandpa Luke's estate at 7 today for supper, and lined ourselves around the long banquet table. At one end, Grandpa Luke and Grandma Jane sat at the head of the table, with their children, my parents and 6 aunts and uncles. All of them had been brought down to the basement, except for my Uncle Joe and his wife Laura. I watched from the opposite end, as Uncle Joe, dressed in his best suit, picked at his roast, eyeing the fine crystal bowl above the fireplace anxiously. He'd likely feel better, had new names not been added for every new marriage into the family, and every new child born. There's no age limit for being brought below. As well, there's always the few papers marked with a small X. "Ah, I'm sorry everybody," Grandpa Luke would announce if those were pulled. "Looks like this is an off year." "Uncle Ollie, look." My niece Leia was perched on her seat beside me. She had molded her mashed potatoes into the shape of a mermaid, with 2 peas as brilliant green eyes. My jaw dropped in perform for kids' amazement. "Oh wow. That is such good work, Lil Leia." She giggled, fixed her thin blonde hair, and responded with a proud yeah. She's not one for thank yous, which, hey, more power to her. I love her stubborn self-confidence. I've sat on the kids' end every year, even when I got into my mid-20s. They're such brilliant little critters. And I know that if they were in charge, everyone would know about the basement, and we would be doing something about it. But that's tradition for you. Someone way back in our lineage decided no, we keep this a secret, and ever since then, it's been one person at a time, 1 year at a time. But we deserve to know. Everyone deserves to know. A glass shattered. All eyes went to Cassidy, my brother Stephen's new wife. Deep red wine was slowly spreading across the tablecloth, and her face was in her hands, her head bobbing in laughter. "I'm so sorry," she choked out between chuckles. "Stephen's just such a..." She fell into her lap. It certainly wasn't her first wine. Stephen gave everyone a look to let them know he had it under control and helped her to her feet. He put one hand around her waist and began leading her away. She tittered once more. "Oh my, maybe I should lay down for a bit." "Is Auntie Cass okay?" Leia asked, fiddling with her clean and pressed dress. "Oh, she's fine, sweetie." But just as they passed the oaken doorframe and turned left towards their room, I saw her face break into streaks of tears, and a certain sickness take hold of her as she gripped her stomach. "Well," my Grandpa Luke exclaimed, brushing off his hands in front of him. "Wasn't that just delectable? If a couple of the strapping young men come help me with the dishes, we can bring out the dessert." This was the one day my grandparents gave their staff the night off. So myself, my Uncle Joe and my dad all started gathering the best finery my family had. Not before I helped Leia off her chair and brought her over to the play area with the other kids. There was a Jenga set her height over there, and they'd all been eyeing it all night. Last thing I saw before getting to the dishes was little Jacob, only 4 years older than Leia and having already been brought down into the basement 3 years back, pulling blocks out from the middle, slowly and methodically. We stacked everything in neat piles, transferred much of it into their dishwasher, then stood about reminiscing over the year behind us. "Your little ones are getting so tall," Grandpa remarked to Uncle Joe. Joe rubbed his bald head with a smile. "Yeah, they're also getting to be a handful. We need to find a way to afford a nanny to help things out." Grandpa deftly ignored the hint with a soft nod. Of course, a good nanny is difficult to come by. I poured myself a glass of beer, then one for my dad. "Thanks, Oliver," he muttered. He was also clearly worried about who was going down there tonight. At the very least, he didn't agree with having the kids be an option. He would say they're too young to handle this. I suppose that's where I get my rebellious spirit. Stephen joined us in the kitchen, a somewhat apologetic smile on his face. "Cassidy's taking a nap. She'll be fine for the countdown, don't worry." "Of course. Wonderful young lady you have there," my grandpa said. "Yes, she's perfect. Things are just pretty stressful, and she's..." Stephen thought for a moment. "Yeah. She's adapting. Cassidy's name was drawn 2 years ago." "Of course she is. She's strong. I can tell," Grandpa assured him. After that, we all returned to the table for the pies and cakes, another sweep of dishes, and folks spread out to their own areas for the couple hours before the countdown. My dad stuck near my grandpa, irritating to me, while my Uncle Joe rejoined with the rest of the man to give my grandpa space. He knew he'd made his one push for some help, for maybe his name to appear from that bowl, and now he needed to back off. I sat with my mom and my sister as they chatted about our ski retreat in January, about our beautiful Christmas tree, about my sister's financier fiancé and how much they wished he could have joined us tonight. But it's a family-only affair, of course. And marriage is what truly makes someone family. Fucking traditions. I turned to the kids area again. Leia was sobbing in a corner. It was probably nothing, kids cry all the time, but I went over anyways. "What's up, Lil Leia?" I asked. "Jacob keeps hogging all the pieces," she sniffled. Jacob did, indeed, have a massive collection of the blocks, almost enough to build the full tower. "Did you try talking to Jacob's mom? Or one of the other adults?" "Yeah, but they said it was fine." She pouted, indignantly. "Of course they did. Listen, sweetheart. Sometimes, all these grown-ups think what they say is right, that Jacob deserves the blocks he has. But that's all bull-hooey, you hear me?" I paused so she could giggle. "You deserve just as much of what you want as Jacob does. Maybe even more. You just gotta take it. Like he did." Leia nodded. "Thanks, Uncle Ollie." She wrapped her little arms around me, then ran off. I figured if there was any time to do what I needed to do, it was now. I walked across the dining hall, through the wide doorframe, and towards my grandpa's study. Inside, I found him chatting with my dad, still. I clenched my jaw. "Hey Dad, Mom wants to chat with you. Something about the ski trip, sounds important." "Oh," he said. He grabbed his beer, cheersed Grandpa, and walked by me. "I don't want you making a fuss," he said to me in passing. "It's fine," I replied. Entirely non-committal. I casually closed the door behind me. Grandpa smiled at me brightly, swirling a glass on whiskey. "How's your year been, Oliver?" he asked. "I understand you've been doing very well at your programming, was it?" "Yeah, doing well, could be doing better." I sat down at the chair beside him. "I was wondering if we could chat real quick." He sighed and set his glass down. "Of course. What would you like to talk about?" "The basement," was all I gave him. "Of course," he repeated. "It's been quite a year for you, I imagine. A lot of big changes. But usually, when one of the family's name is drawn on New Year's, the following year is the most prosperous time of their life. They skyrocket." He knew what I was going to say. I'd talked with my parents in tears multiple times in those early months, so they had to have brought it to him. "I don't think it's right." Another soft nod. "I understand. But this is the best way of doing it." "How do you know?" I asked, my voice raising. "We've never tried anything else. It has been working for hundreds of years." He spoke only with a chuckle. "At some point down the line, from my great-great-great-grandparents onwards, if it needed to change it would have done so by now. Everyone deserves to know. Fuck, the world deserves to know." That really got his attention. Plenty of us had talked about telling everyone in the family, but no one had dared bring up the idea that the world finds out what goes on deep beneath this building. No one dared tell anyone else what we were. Grandpa Luke pointed one stern finger at me. "You know damn well what you're proposing could get you." His eyes sunk deeper, shadows casting over the whites of his eyes. I felt the movement wriggling through my abdomen and up my chest. My face turned into a grimacing snarl before he could react. He was getting old and weak. My jaw disconnected from my face, allowing the whole of my mouth to spread wide open, as well as my throat to match it. Before he could even move, my maw spread almost to the hardwood floor. "Oliver, no," he gasped out, but they were coming, countless, writhing, tentacle-like worms, of all colors known to man and otherwise, exploded from me and engulfed his form. Before he could cry out or make another sound, some of the silvery worms slipped into his mouth and flew down to where his own lay, old and weak, to devour them. I heard their cries in my mind, not in the air. But they didn't cry long, and the sounds were overwhelmed by the sounds of my own moaning and elation. The sound of power. As the worms retreated to my body, there was nothing left of the old man. Not a speck of blood, nor a scrap of meat. I grabbed his whiskey. Uncle Joe stood at the door. His eyes were wide in shock, but he didn't make a sound. I locked eyes with him for some time in that empty room. Then he swallowed hard, nodded, and walked away. Uncle Ollie. Uncle Ollie. Leia called to me as I re-entered the dining room. I built a huge tower. I picked her up in my arms and looked at the magnificent creation, all slanty and full of gaps. "That's gorgeous. Hey sweetie, wanna come look at the fire?" "Yeah." We wandered over to the fire, where I set her down to marvel. While she did, I grabbed the crystal bowl, played around with the little slips of paper, then pulled one out. "Joe Tremblay. Looks like it was your lucky year, regardless, Uncle Joe." I threw the bowl and papers out. "Hey Leia, you wanna know something?" I asked her, crouched down to her level. She nodded enthusiastically. "We're doing things extra special this year. You, Uncle Joe, and Cassidy, Mama, we're all going down to the basement. Together." She clapped in surprise, made an exaggerated gasping face. I did too, opening my jaw just slightly wider. "At midnight, we're going to head on down, down those slick stone steps. Far too many, far too dark. And at the bottom, in that pool of water that goes down God knows how much farther, something so powerful waits. What belongs to us? What is us? And it needs a nice warm home." "Everybody!" Grandma Jane called out, oblivious. "It's getting close to the countdown. Gather up." I stood up and took Leia's tiny hand. "The whole family deserves to know. The whole world will know. And they aren't ready."